This is Jack Foran in Melbourne, Australia, chatting with Max Goldberg, who Brian Rust records in his book, The Dance Band Days, in these terms. Max Goldberg was one of the most valuable assets to any band, and there were few indeed with which he never played, and was in constant demand by recording managers such as Ray Noble for strengthening his brass section. Hello, Max.
Hello, Jack.
How are you?
I'm okay, and you?
Very well too, thank you. Now, first of all, let's clear up one thing. You've been referred to as an Englishman, as a Canadian, and even an American. What's the true story?
The true story is I'm an Englishman.
Yeah.
But when I was a year old, my father and mother and the rest of the family emigrated to Toronto, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I got my education in Toronto, and then I was offered a job to go to London with a band called the Buffalo Band.
Yes.
To play at the Piccadilly Hotel alongside of Jack Hilton.
Oh.
Yes. And we were there 6 weeks, but Jack sort of didn't like the competition, so we were hoofed over to Birmingham, and where I stayed and played in the Palace with the same Buffalo Orchestra for 18 months. Then I left them and took my chances, went to London, took my chances, played in nightclubs, tried to form a little band, including Joe Daniels, Dave Kay of Morton and Kay,
yes.
Laurie Payne of the Ray Noble Orchestra. They were the three stars at that time.
Yeah.
And I drifted from there. I got a job at the Criterion restaurant at Piccadilly Circus.
Yes.
And I had in that band Joe Daniels, Dave Kay, Laurie Payne, and I can't remember the other two. Then Dave Kay went to join his partner, Morton, and who should jump into the band with a young 17-year-old brilliant pianist by the name of Bert Reed.
Yes, New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
He was with Henry Hall, if you remember.
Yes, I do.
Now, he stayed with me until I left the orchestra and freelanced around. And the next thing I knew, I auditioned, I think, for the Savoy Havana Band under Reg Batten.
That's right.
And
That would be what? 1926?
1926, something like that.
1926, yeah,
Yes.
that's about the time.
Yes. And I stayed with that band, and in that band at the time was a great trombonist, Tony Thorpe.
Oh, yes.
Can't remember who else was in the band of note, but we used to make records, even in those days, for HMV. We'd alternate the Savoy Havana or the Savoy Orpheans.
That's right.
And I stayed with them for same time, I think it was.
So you went to Ambrose?
Yeah. Ambrose came in to hear us one day, and his trumpet player, Sylvester Ahola, was leaving to go back to America, and I was the only one available at the time. Probably the only one who could read music well, because I was always good at reading music.
How would September 1931 sound to you as being the date that happened? Well, that's the date that is recorded as the first time you played trumpet with the famous Ambrose Band. So, let's go back to the start of your association with music. How did you come to play anything? Like, was it your desire or at the behest of your parents, Max?
No, it was my desire. I seemed to have a natural bent for musical instruments, and at that time I was very lucky. My professor, and he was really a professor, he started us off, 42 of us, from the ages of 8 to 16.
Oh.
He taught each and every one of us our instruments, ranging from the oboe to the double tuba. Yes.
That's why I had to buy the tuba for
Exactly.
you. This had me baffled.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. And he taught us theory, harmony, and everything. And he used to write all our music.
Oh.
And not only did he tell us how to play, he played it as well. He jumped from one instrument to the other and played. He was a magnificent musician. and he used to write this. It was like copybook writing, the way he used to write things for us, all original music. And one thing I'll tell you about him, Professor Glass was his name. He was the only Jew to ever be allowed to play in the Imperial Guards Orchestra of the Tsar Nicholas, who at that time was head of an anti-Semitic mob in Russia.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
Oh, I didn't know
And he
that.
was the only one. I only know an example parallel to that was in England, when a friend of mine, his father, Borsdorf, a German, during World War I, his father was allowed to play at the Palace, even though he was a German. And if you remember or read about the anti-German feeling in England at that time was enormous.
Right.
Well, the same thing. They couldn't get anybody to replace him.
No.
See? Well, he used to teach it, and we used to, what do we say? In those days, there were no trumpets, only cornets.
Yes.
See? But if he had a surfeit of cornets, he used to put us on what we call a quasi, or like a French horn. A French horn, you play, you finger it with your left hand. A mellophone, you finger with your right hand.
I was going to ask about a mellophone now.
Yeah.
In some of my readings in the Gramophone magazine of the 30s, where records are reviewed by Edgar Jackson,
That's true.
he'll say the mellophone was doubled by Max Goldberg from trumpet.
That's right.
Could you describe the mellophone to us now?
Well,
It's intrigued me for years.
Yeah, well, a mellophone is like if you know what a French horn, it's an
Yes.
elongated thing, but instead of having your fingers play with the right hand like a mellophone, you played it with the left hand on the French horn. It's only exactly the same thing,
Is it?
you see. But some French horns actually have 4 valves. These had 3. Play it.
The mellophone had 3.
Mellophone had 3, and you finger it like a trumpet. Same thing.
And what would the sound
Be like a French horn.
like a French horn?
Yeah.
I'll have to listen more attentively in future then.
Yes.
But this has intrigued me. I'm very grateful you've cleared that thing up for me. Now, you did have a student here earlier in the day. I know this, so apparently you're still in tune with the music scene. You're still doing some teaching.
Oh yes, yes. I've since I retired, I was at Clayton for 5 years. Clayton Technical College. I taught, and not only did I teach trumpet there, my musicianship was so good because of my professor that I was able to teach trumpet, saxophone, tuba, euphonium, baritone, and trombone. All those instruments I had a very good knowledge of.
6, you're able to teach them.
Yes. Oh yeah, I taught them. Not only that, I took them through university examinations on those instruments.
Good heavens.
Oh yes, French horn included.
Of course, for people who don't know where Clayton is one of the eastern suburbs of the city of Melbourne, quite a big city, and a big school that Max refers to. Now, you were with many top-line bands during your days in London. Al Collins at the Berkeley Hotel, and Sidney Lipton's Grosvenor House Band, to name 2. But it's Ambrose that most of us associate you with, really.
Yes. Well, I was 10 years with him the first time.
Yes.
And after the war, he started up again, and he said, would I like to join his orchestra? And I was with him for another 2 years. And in that time, we went to Monte Carlo for the summer and played in the Sporting Palace.
What do you mean you played in the sporting? You mean you played music, or you played the...
No, we played music.
You might have.
We played music, Jack.
What about the maestro?
Yeah, the maestro played the cards.
Yes.
Yes.
I've heard him say this.
Yes, and he lost a lot of money.
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, yes. But I will say that my wife enjoyed Monte Carlo better than me, because before the war, we had been to Monte Carlo with Ambrose.
Yes.
In a year, and his master's voice in those days brought the whole recording, because we used to record for his master's voice once a month, and being away 6 weeks, we'd have lost the monthly recording. So they got the recorder, the recording machine, the whole caboose, and they took it down to Monte Carlo with it, and we made records there as well.
I can believe that because I've got some of those records, and they're marked this in the show, and in the discographies is being recorded at Monte Carlo.
That's true. And Ted Heath was there at the time.
Yes. Sidney Lipton told me just recently that he thought the Grosvenor House Band of 1935 was one of his best, because both Ted Heath, who you've just mentioned, and this prompts the question, and yourself joined him from Ambrose, and Billy Munn had transferred from Hilton.
That's true. That's true.
Now, how do you think that was a good band?
Oh, that was a good band. Oh yes, very good band. We used to do. It was mostly a melody band.
Yes.
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 And we had a very good arranger there by the name of George Evans.
Is that who did those arrangements?
George.
Robins and Roses is a particular favourite of mine.
All
area.
done by George Evans. And the first alto player naturally was a great man by Harry Hayes. That was his name. And then there was, as you say, Billy Munn. There's the nucleus of a fine band.
Isn't there ever?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, Sidney Lipton's a very nice fellow. He was very kind to me when I was there, and he did wish to be remembered very kindly to you. He remembered you very, very well and spoke of you with a lot of feeling.
Oh, thank you.
Now, talking of being in demand too, you're very much in demand for recording sessions. As a matter of fact, your old friend Mickey Lewis claims there's a set of footprints in the pavement leading to the HMV studios which fit your shoes, Max. You were there so often that you made your own track.
That's true. And I'm going to tell you something else. People might not believe me, and people might believe I'm skitey. But in my time, I have accompanied or made at least 5,000 to 10,000 records in that time. Oh, yes. Well, I'll give you some of the names.
Yes.
Once a month, Jack Buchanan, Gracie Fields, Elizabeth Webb, Al Bowley, your own Peter Dawson.
Yes.
All monthly, 2 sides. Every time. A Dutchman used to come over. Never knew his name. He used to come over. Then we'd have Chevalier.
Maurice.
Yes,
Yeah.
he'd come over. We'd do record. We'd accompany him. A host of other, Flanagan and Allen, people like that. And naturally, when they did these things, they used to do once a month Cicely Courtnidge, Jack Hulbert and his brother, and all those people. Well, I was very busy that way.
Well, that wasn't just... most of those you spoke about were with Ray Noble, weren't
Yes,
they? Under
that's
his
true.
direction at that early time anyway. But what about Jay Wilbur and the Crystallite Company?
Oh, and the Crystallite. Well, we used to do dance records.
That's
with
right.
With the Crystallite.
He used to grab you. I believe there was yourself, there was Freddie Gardner,
That's right.
Ted Heath and Dick Escott, were the nucleus of most of his records that he made under his directorship for the companies, the house bands.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, we did quite a few of them.
There was a special label, a 9-inch label, wasn't there, for Woolworths, the Crown label.
Oh, we started that.
Yeah.
That's true.
One of my earliest Vera Lynn's is on that, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
On
yes.
the Crown label.
Yeah, yes.
So you had a pretty hectic professional life.
Yes, I enjoyed every minute of it, I'll tell you that, and that's quite frank. We used to go, well, I'd average, 8 hours, I suppose 8 hours sleep, which was quite good in those days, because we used to work till 1 or 2 in the morning, as George Smith, you remember, told you?
Yes,
and then
he
we'd
did.
be up again at 7 or 1:30 and get to the studios, either the recording studios or the broadcasting studios, and go from there. In the afternoon we'd go somewhere else or stay at HMV or Decca or whatever.
But I said to George, it must have been good because you all must be around the 70 mark, to be very kindly, without going any further, and you all look so fit, your memories are so good. No, really and truly, so like you've thrived on the life, that's all I can say. All right, so we've mentioned lots of great names. There's been 2 long plays released of the 6 Swingers. Now that comes back to George Scott Wood, doesn't it?
That's true. Yeah.
What
George,
about those? Can you remember them at all?
Yeah.
They were selling like hotcakes.
Yeah,
incidentally.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Well, there you are. Twice a month we'd be at HMV, which was allied to Columbia in those days. I think it was on a Columbia label, wasn't it?
No, it was on the Regal, actually.
Well, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. Right. Well, we were there twice a month for him, and as I say, Freddie Gardner was on it, and so was Bill Hardy, I believe, was playing drums, and George used to play the piano, and we had an instrument called the goofus. You remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Well, he's the only fella I'd ever seen play the goofus. And Dick Escott was on bass, and
Freddie Gardner, you know, oh dear.
So we'd get the
Jordan saxophone.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, all right. So the six swingers, but what about the hotter type of dance music on Columbia, the gilt-edged four?
Oh,
can you remember them?
Yes, I can.
Well, who were they? Who were some of the people? Well, I know they vary. Before you correct me,
they did vary.
Yeah,
but first of all, the original was Joe Branley on guitar, and before Joe Branley was Eddie Lang. If you remember Joe Venuti, the fiddle player, and his partner Eddie Lang.
Yes.
Eddie was the first one. Then Joe Branley took over from him, and the pianist was Carol Gibbons.
Yes.
And they had a trumpet player who was there. He made 2 or 3 records before I got there, from America, from New York, I believe. I can't remember his name.
Well, let's get back to when you were there, because it's you we're talking to, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, when I was there,
you would have had Phyllis.
Len Phyllis played the guitar as well.
Branley, yes.
Yeah.
Well, Sid Bright on piano.
Sid Bright on piano. That was when Carol Gibbons and Joe Branley did something else.
That's right. Now, what about the Streeters? They were involved too, weren't they? The 3 Streeter brothers. More so, Rudy and Al.
Yes.
Or Ray and Al, I think, and probably Rudy occasionally only.
Yeah, Rudy,
I always get those two mixed up.
Rudy more, because he played the vibraphone.
Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah, I get them mixed up all the time.
But Ray, Al. Al Streeter was the alto sax.
That's right.
And Ray was the tenor sax. Well, we very rarely used Ray, but Al used to do the records with us. One particular one was, if you can get it, called Honey Bunch. I'm featured on.
Oh, I must try and look for that.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to have a copy lying around the garage with that those mutes of yours that we had earlier.
Yes.
Looking through the records, if you'll pardon the pun, that was unintentional. In 1931, you played with Roy Fox in the first 2 sessions he used Don Bowley as his vocalist. Now, you made so many sides with Bowley, under Noble's direction, and a terrific number of recordings with Sam Brown, with Ambrose and Scott Wood and other people. Now,
yes, that's right.
Just briefly, how would you compare the two fellows? As vocalists?
One was Sam Brown, was a methodical good singer, but he didn't have the heart that Bowley had. Bowley could he could sing a thing and imagine the romance.
Interpret it.
Yes. But Sam used to sing just for the money.
Yes.
That
Business.
was the difference. Exactly. Business.
Still 2 nice voices.
Oh, yes. Sam was very good, considering he couldn't read a note.
Is that a fact?
Oh, yeah. Considering he couldn't, he'd pick it up.
In the head.
Yeah, but Al could, because Al played the guitar.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he'd pick it up in the head quickly. In those days, as I say, you had to take who you could get.
Well, being 10,000 miles away, I suppose it's safe to say, without upsetting the Jack Plant lovers and Denny Dennis lovers, that my 2 favourite English vocalists of the era are Sam Brown and, without me telling you, Al Bowley, of course. Now, you left England, as we know, to come to Australia, and we're very grateful for this. This gives me the chance to talk to you anyway. When was that?
1957.
1957.
Yes.
And what did you do when you came here first?
We went to Brisbane.
Yes.
And as we had a boarding house in London.
London, yeah. I know where it was.
You know.
Yeah, I've been shown. Tiny showed me.
Oh, yes. Well, my wife says, well, let's do that, because there was very little work in Brisbane. And I was there for over a year, I believe. And a friend of mine, on that picture you can see over
Max
there.
Blake,
Max
yes.
Blake.
The New Zealand Kiwi, yes.
Yeah. Well, Max Blake used to come down in Melbourne tonight when it was the big thing here.
On the television.
On television.
Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't know at the time that a great friend of mine, Arthur Young.
Yes, was director.
Had the orchestra.
That's right.
So I just casually mentioned to Max. I says, if you see Arthur, give him my kind regard. So he did. And the next thing, I get a phone call, and he says, is that you, Max? I said, yes, that's me. He said, what are you doing in that cow town? I says, what do you mean a cow town? Brisbane's a nice place. He says, well, come down here. He says, you want to be in the big money? Come down here. So I grabbed the first train. I came down and I played, and at that time, Norm Spencer was the big shot.
Yes, he was.
TV9.
Production manager.
And Norm is as big a collector of Ray Noble records as you are.
Yes, I know.
And Norm said, would you like to join the band? I said, okay. If I don't put anybody out of work, I'll join the band. And I was there for 10 years.
And many a time I've seen you stand up and take a solo spot on the television there and saying, by gee, I wish I could meet that fellow. And here we are.
Yeah.
And it's not our first meeting. And
Yeah.
I'm very, very grateful to you and to your wife, Betty, for the chance to get to know you and know you as a friend and talk to you on these things. And I must ask you this. How did you feel when you heard George Smith tell me in London on the tape, said he, along with many more of your old colleagues, thought you were dead a long time ago?
Well, it was funny. Really funny.
Wasn't
Yeah, it was funny.
I was staggered.
Well, there you are. As I say, George Smith, I can remember, I can see him right now with that bowler hat.
Another nice fellow.
Oh, and yeah, nice fella. But one of the establishment.
Yes.
See?
Well, he's at the Savoy. He's the manager of the Savoy Theater.
Savoy Theater.
So,
Yes.
although he didn't treat me as though he were a member of the establishment. He is very nice and very kind to me. Gave me a lot of his time. But I did assure him that you were alive.
Alive.
And
One day I'll write to him.
Well, I hope you do. Well, there we have it. A very much alive Max Goldberg. Still, in my opinion anyway, the greatest master of the muted trumpet ever. Thanks very much, Max.
Thank you, Jack.